Hello, 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 my friends. Thank you for joining us at WriteHiveCon 2025. This is the guest of honor interview with Natalie Maher, aka Thundermoo. I'm Nicholas W. Fuller. I have a YouTube channel where I talk about books and interview authors, and I'm the author of the just released science fantasy novella Shattered. Today, I get the privilege to interview Natalie Maher, aka Thundermoo. Natalie, I'm so glad I get a chance to speak with you. Thank you for joining me in all of WriteHiveCon 2025.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's, I suppose, an honor to be a guest of honor.
Absolutely. For anyone that's not familiar with you and your work, can you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit, talk about what you write?
Yeah, I'm Natalie Maher, and I write web serials, mostly on Royal Road and through Patreon, um, focusing primarily on queer and neurodivergent fantasy and science fiction.
Wonderful. Okay. And I see your BioShifter cover. Is that your latest work?
It is my latest completed series,
Fair enough. All
but
right.
there are a couple books out of two new series that I have started. Are You Even Human? And Magical Girl, Mechanical Heart.
I love that title. I like Magical Girl, Mechanical Heart. I like it. I was reading a little bit of the blurb and interesting premise. I like it a lot. Before we kind of get into the work specifically, and I do want to talk about what you're working on right now and how you kind of balance your different projects and that sort of thing. But let's talk a little bit about what that process is like from kind of a high level, because you mentioned that you post on Royal Road and you post on Patreon. You're a serialized writer, which is a little bit different than what maybe some people are used to. Can you just kind of explain a little bit about what Royal Road is and like how that process works for you?
Yeah, so the basic idea behind the process is that I write one chapter at a time and I release one chapter at a time online. And the specific website I post most of my work on is Royal Road, which is just a website that hosts fiction for this exact sort of situation. Pretty good one, honestly. There are a few, but I like Royal Road. And the basic idea is that people read my books there online for free, but if they like my books, they can subscribe to my Patreon and they'll get several chapters in advance. I personally run 10 chapters in advance on my Patreon, so they get about a third of the book extra if they pay, and that's how I make most of my income. And then the rest is supplementary from the full book releases in ebook format and the audiobooks,
Right,
which are
right,
published more traditionally.
right. Yeah, I think at least some of your audiobooks are published through Podium. Is that right?
Yes, although for Magical Girl, well, they currently are, yes.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. So, yeah, just to, yeah, you write one chapter at a time. Are you a complete pantser? Are you a plotter? Or are you somewhere in between?
I'd say I'm somewhere in between. I plot out the broad strokes.
Hmm.
Early on in my writing career, I just wrote as I went
Hmm.
because I kind of stumbled into this career entirely by accident and was just sort of writing for fun, and posting my stuff online for free, and it ended up getting really, really popular. So I put up a Patreon, and now it's my career. Um, but at that time, I was not a plotter at all. I had no idea what I was doing. And
Yeah.
some of my early work really reflects that. Um, but now I do plan out stuff a lot more in advance. And but the exact details chapter by chapter, I don't really plot out. Much more the broad strokes, where things are going, how they need to get there.
Sure.
Because part of the important thing about being a serial author is that every individual chapter kind of needs to be interesting on its own to keep reader retention.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have to have like little miniature
Hmm.
things happening in every chapter.
Okay, so you're a serialized writer. How often are you posting a new chapter?
So I write two books at once, and I post a chapter for each of them once a week, and the chapters are about 6,000 words apiece. Although, because I don't want to die, I take a week off every month. My loved ones have more or less forced me to take time off regularly, because I didn't do that at first, and turns out that's bad for you.
Yeah, cranking out 12,000 words a week and not coming up from air. That seems like a lot. Yeah.
It is a lot. That is, I would say, the big downside to being a serialized author. Word count output is really, really important.
Hmm.
Um, but the upside is that I, especially as someone with ADHD, find it a lot easier to motivate myself in a chapter by chapter format because there's
Mm,
always immediate deadlines
mm.
and there's always immediate feedback. Every single time you write a chapter and you post it, the people who like reading your book will comment on it, and it's delightful to just get all that positive feedback almost every time you complete a chapter.
That's pretty wonderful. Well, that's a perfect segue. You mentioned that you have ADHD, and you also have told me before that like your writing reflects your lived experience. Can you kind of expand on that and tell us how so?
Yeah, best I can tell, the reason my work kind of got popular in the way it has is because I write very much towards the specific niche niche of queer and neurodivergent readers, because I, of course, myself am both of those things, and so I write characters that struggle through a lot of the same struggles I've lived through, and that consequently my audience has lived through. And that can come from, various forms of lived trauma, from just the experience of growing up autistic, um, religious trauma from dealing with being not straight, um, and so on and so forth. And just generally struggling in a world that expects us to think in a way we don't actually think. Um, and that has resonated with a lot of people because I don't hold back on these sorts of things that has done to me as a person. And a lot of people find that very cathartic to read about.
Yeah, I bet. I'm sure that the people that are living similar experiences feel seen in your work, right? And
That's the
I
hope.
right. And you mentioned that you think or you know that your audience is kind of reflecting of some of the same experiences that you have. I'm imagining that some of this is probably uh not just an assumption, but like a verifiable truth in that like
Yeah,
you have
so
comments from some of your readers both on Roarwood and Patreon where I imagine they're saying, "Oh, this is me."
yeah, absolutely. I also have a Discord server that I host
Uh,
and have a lot of interaction with my audience, just
hmm.
on a relatively personal level, as personal as you can get between writer and fan, you know.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, no, I speak with members of my audience relatively frequently, and yeah, it's pretty clear where the demographics lie.
Sure, sure. And so again, this is your full-time job, and I just want to like kind of touch on some of that. You've been doing this for a while, right? You've
Yeah, I think a bit over 4 years now.
okay. And is that like around the time that I guess that's when you started serializing, or was it a little before that, or like, or is that the point where you became like full-time?
The point I became full-time, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it would have been 2021, like February 2021,
Nice.
when I first set up the Patreon, which I guess would be the start of my professional career.
Yeah, yeah, sure. And like, were you writing? Was your writing initially? I mean, this writing was started as a pandemic project, as so many writers do, or no?
Sort of, sort of. So I worked a job that had very, very, very long hours. So I
Mm.
lived alone and worked 70 hours a week up in
Oof.
this dinky little apartment. So I certainly wasn't bored during the pandemic.
Mm.
Um, but my job had a good chunk of downtime where there was nothing to do but wait, and I would just spend the time writing because when you write emails to yourself, people don't bother you. When the email app is open, they're like, "Oh, that person's working somehow."
Nice.
Um, and that ended up being a habit for when I was laid off for definitely unrelated reasons. I kept writing while I was looking for other jobs, and then it turned into a job.
There you go. Nice. Okay. Lovely how that happens. So, yeah, like 4 years ago, it kind of turned into a job, and you've been building your audience since, and it's an audience of like-minded people, which is fantastic. Has your audience been growing steadily over this time, or have you had like big jumps in your audience?
It's definitely like staggered jumps for
Hmm.
sure.
Hmm.
Usually based on when I release a new series.
Hmm.
Um, I'm sure traditionally published authors know the terror of releasing a new series and having absolutely no idea how popular it will be. And so do I. I've recently had a significant jump in readership from Magical Girl Mechanical Heart,
Nice.
which is not the story I expected to become popular out of the two I recently started. But it is, and so I've been rolling with that, and it's been nice. But for several years, I was sticking at around the same income and around the same readership until fairly recently.
Nice to be. I think that's one of the things that's cool about serialization, though, is it gives you like some reliability, right? Because people,
It
you're
can,
getting,
yeah.
yeah,
Uh, but when you finish a series, you tend to lose a lot of readers,
sure,
which is, it's kind of backwards there.
sure.
Completing the book is what makes you lose money. That's why some serial authors just keep going and write the
Yeah,
same series
right,
forever.
right. Yeah, looking at He Who Fights with Monsters and Primal Hunter right there, right? Just endless.
That's the quintessential example for sure.
Yep. Um, so how are you managing to balance writing 12,000 words total per week across two different projects? So you said 6,000 words a chapter with a chapter
Hmm.
for each, right?
That's
I
right.
like, I was making sure my math is mathing. That's a lot.
It is a lot, and I would say that the main way I would answer your question is that I don't balance it. I have a terrible work-life balance. I'm just really bad at it. Yeah. Uh,
Well, fair, fair. I mean, but are you like kind of sitting down and banging out a chapter in one of them in a day, or is it taking you 2 days? And like, do you end up, I can't imagine that you write like a zero draft. I don't think that can work for if you're doing a
yeah,
series,
no,
right? You must write pretty
I
clean.
just typed through the whole chapter in one go.
Yeah.
Um, a bunch of my fans act as unpaid beta readers for me. Um, and I send the chapter off to them. They do a few quick edits. We slap the chapter out onto Patreon. It inevitably has several more typos, which the Patreon readers catch, and so I fix those. We slap it out onto Royal Road a couple months later. Inevitably still has typos. They catch some of those, and then hopefully by the time it actually goes into print, well, not like physical print, but ebook print,
Hmm.
it has not typos, but of course it inevitably does. That's sort of the process. Yeah, I write 2,000 words a day, six
Okay.
days a week is
Hmm.
is my general goal, and then I try to have one day off. I often won't have any days off because I won't hit my
The
goal
two,
on the
yeah.
prior days, and I'll have to make up for lost time. But at the same time, like I work at home, and if I'm having a really, really tough day writing, sometimes it is okay to just like, okay, maybe I'll just take my break day today, or maybe
Yeah.
I'll just take a short break and play some video games, or maybe I'll do this and maybe I'll do that. And sometimes it works out and everything gets out on time. Sometimes it doesn't and I'm late. But I have definitely gotten to the point where I'll have to delay chapters, but I'll almost never have to cancel them. and skip them for the week,
Hmm.
which I'm very, very happy about because that wasn't always the case. It took a lot of years of trial and error to figure out a system that worked for me.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting too, that to me that you're doing these 6,000 word chapters and once a week, because that is my understanding. That's not necessarily the norm or even the sort of like ideal on Royal Road. Was that fair?
Yeah, that is correct. I would say some of the really successful authors aim for, well, pretty much the same word count, but 2,000 word chapters 3 times a week
Hmm.
is something I see um, recommended a fair bit. I would say 2,000 word chapters is probably the minimum you
Hmm.
want to shoot for on Royal Road. The really, really short chapters can sometimes turn people off because when someone says, "Ooh, there's a new update for my favorite story," they want to like read it for a while, you know?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, there's a bunch of different ways to go about it. I would say as long as you're updating at least once a week, you're doing pretty okay by serial author standards.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
But if you can do more, that's better.
Right. So we talked a little bit too about your lived experiences and how that is reflected in your writing. Has there
Hmm.
been anything that you've written about that's felt very personal that either your audience had a response that was powerful and expected or completely unexpected to what you thought they would resonate with them?
Hmm. Well, I immediately have a very funny answer to that question, though I'm not sure
Funny's
if it's
good.
appropriate. Um,
We can do whatever. Go for it.
well, the first thing that comes to mind for something that was powerful and unexpected. In one of my stories, there's this very, very controversial character, um, who is basically someone that was mind controlled into a completely different person entirely.
Mm,
And my intention when writing this character was um, mostly to have it be horror, right? Like the idea of someone taking your mind and turning you into a completely different person. It's supposed to be horror. Most of my audience, well, maybe not most of my audience, but a loud portion of my audience found it really, really sexy. Um, which turns out, as I have learned over the years, to be a very common theme in horror writing.
mm,
I write something that is supposed to be horrific from my perspective, and the audience finds it sexy. Um, or vice versa. Um,
mhm.
which is just it's a thing that has happened a lot. I'm no longer surprised by it, but I certainly was very surprised the first time. And
Sure.
I've kind of leaned into a little bit of that, like knowing what to expect and knowing how to write it. You can kind of manipulate even how that audience reacts to stuff, if you choose to. Um, but also like, sure, go off, Queens. Like, if you're into that,
Right,
I'm
right.
cool with it.
Who are we to yuck their yum, right? Right. Yeah.
But for a more serious example, BioShifter, the story up here,
Hmm.
um, is an infamous story of mine, for being very, very, very dark.
Hmm.
It deals with a lot of themes like sexual assault and suicidal ideation and existing in a world that is fundamentally hostile to you and having no way to solve that whatsoever. It is a story about despair and finding reasons to live anyway. And for a lot of my audience, that is a very meaningful message because there's a lot of terrifying things going on right now, especially for queer people. And the message of sometimes it doesn't turn out okay. Sometimes the problems don't get solved, but you can live and love regardless, um, is, I think, the message that I'm most proud of sending to the
I love that so much. And I think I can't remember where I saw it, but like, yeah, I think when the world is falling apart or the world feels it is very much against you, having that love and that perseverance is an act of resistance, and celebrating anything is an act of resistance. In fact, like I was speaking with Jerusha, who's one of the organizers of Right Hive Con and Right Hive. It's a difficult time for her and the world's falling apart, and she's like, I don't even wasn't even necessarily feeling like doing the con this year. And I'm so glad that you are, so glad that you, because it's this virtual space, yes, but it's like a safe place for people. And I think that that's so valuable and so wonderful that we all get to be a part of it. I'm glad that you resonated with your readers in a similar way. That's fantastic. Thinking about that, Right Hive's tagline is "Writing the future we need." Love to hear, what does that look like to you?
Neurodivergent people, especially autism spectrum people, and neurotypical people, often have a lot of difficulty empathizing with one another
Mm,
because we think in very, very different ways. And things that make perfect sense to people like me,
mm,
um, and are, polite and kind and thoughtful from the perspective of people like me, will sometimes come off as strange or rude or uncomfortable to other people. And as a consequence, it's very common to see neurotypical and neurodivergent communities naturally segregate from one another because they just find each other somewhat uncomfortable to be around sometimes. Autistic spectrum people live in a world that tells them over and over and over again from birth that they are the assholes, that they're the ones who are doing everything wrong, that they need to be the ones to change because they're making everyone around them uncomfortable. And that's a painful thing to be told for your whole life. To it becomes a thing you believe about yourself, regardless of how true it is. And we all have different ways of coping with that, but it would be wonderful to live in a world where it never had to happen in the first place.
well said. Well said. I have nothing to add to that. I'm just going to move on to the next question because that's beautifully said. Um, if a reader took one thing from your books, what would you hope it to be?
It's okay to be you. That's
Perfect.
it's a bit of a
No,
simple little cliche, but
I,
that really
I,
is what it's about.
no, yes, and I kind of laughed, but because it's beautiful and wonderful, and like it, I mean, and it should be a given, but it's not. And then it needs to be stated over and over and over and over, right?
When you just say it out loud as the common platitude it is, it doesn't feel like it means much. But when you live it through a work of art, it can genuinely help people. And that's what I like to do with my books most.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, let me maybe go to a little bit of a lighter place, although like I love the deep cuts that we're making here with truths. Okay. So Natalie, I want to ask you I kind of a yin and yang question. What is your favorite part and then the most challenging part about your genre? Like you could either talk about the genres that you're writing on, or you could talk about kind of the way that you're writing and the serialized nature and that sort of thing. Your choice.
I would say the most challenging part of writing fantasy is that it's difficult to pull away from the sort of young adult writing style in the sense that fantasy has a very how should I put this? Fantasy, especially on Royal Road, tends to fall into certain specific patterns and styles and demographics and target audiences. that I'm not necessarily going for. So it's fairly common for people to start reading, say, BioShifter, expecting a fun little anime isekai romp, and not expecting, oh, so all that happened. That's
Right.
going to keep me up at night. I'm going to cry now. Um, I go for the jugular, and people often aren't expecting it, and they can get really mad about it when they aren't expecting it, which is always sad to see.
Sure, sure.
My favorite part though is just that I think fantasy is cooler than reality. I just do. I don't think I'll ever stop writing fantasy because I would much rather talk about all these serious worldly issues in the veneer of magic and dragons and spider people and all sorts of wacky stuff. It's way more fun for me.
I love it. Yeah.
I've got a good tagline for you if you
It,
want to. I write books about humanity mainly because I write books about monsters. Yes.
wait, yeah, yeah. Um, so good. And I love that about fantasy too, that we are able to talk about deep issues, but also have fun with it and add dragons, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Any allegory is better if you add a dragon.
Facts, undeniable, undeniable. Um, but I want to ask just like a few more questions. Um, what part of the writing process is most challenging for you? And all of it?
Downtime, slice of life sections,
Mm,
the moments where nothing bad is going on, I really struggle with. Which is somewhat of a joke in among my fans because my stories can get pretty rough. Um, and I have tons of fun when I'm writing the horrible, awful things happening to everyone. But then when it's time to pull it back, pace a little slower, let the characters recover and heal and have a good time. I really struggle. I really
yeah.
struggle to write those. They're harder for me.
Yeah, that's fair. I think when the conflict's not so obvious, it can be a little bit harder, right? Yeah. Um, I want to ask, and we kind of touched on this already, but what are you working on now? And then my final question is going to be, what is the best part of your writing career?
Right now, I am working on two stories. The first is Are You Even Human? It is kind of a kind of sci-fi, but not really superhero-ish story. Um, that is set in a world where, humanity's on the brink of extinction from an alien invasion, blah, 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 blah. Um, people have superpowers for some reason, and they are all being drafted into the military because humanity is on the brink of extinction from an alien invasion. This sucks for everyone. And the main character of this story, Julietta Monroe, is she gains the ability to shapeshift very, very, very freely. Um, she becomes increasingly eldritch as the story goes on. And this is very uncomfortable for most of the people around her. She's very, very weird, and she's very, very sensitive to the social situations around her. So it's kind of like a big extended masking metaphor, and also just an adventure in a horrible world with a very, very, very cynical girl, um, who over the course of the story starts to go, well, maybe I am more like the aliens than I am like the rest of you. Um, and that's always fun for me to write. The other story, Magical Girl Mechanical Heart, is it's a magical girl story, like Sailor Moon, Madoka Magica type of universe.
Okay.
Um, But the main character is not a magical girl, despite the title. She is, in fact, kidnapped by the villains and turned into a robot slave that has to obey their orders. Um, and over the course of the story, however, she learns that, well, maybe these villains aren't actually that bad, except for the one that's enslaving me, obviously. Um,
Big red
and
flag.
she ends up befriending a lot of people on both sides and working through an increasingly difficult situation where everybody just sort of has good reasons to be causing the problems they are causing, but that doesn't mean they aren't causing problems.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just a lot of little character studies, I suppose, would be the fun part of it for me.
Nice.
And what was that last question?
That's the best part of your writing career.
I mean, it's definitely the people I get to help. It's the people I get to help, and then I guess in corollary to that, the people that have entered my life as a result. Almost everyone I live with now, almost all of my closest friends, I have met through becoming an author. Um, and the relationships that has granted me. And I couldn't be more thankful for all of my loved ones, of which I now have many.
Lovely, lovely. Yeah. I think that's yeah, a sentiment I keep hearing and coming back to myself of that just community makes this all so much wonderful. And I'm so grateful for the community that Right Hive has put together. Um, well, I think that's going to wrap us up, Natalie. Thank you for talking with me. Can you tell the people where they can find these wonderful works? Again, we mentioned Royal Road. How do they find you on Royal Road or your Patreon?
Under on Royal Road, I do publish under the name Thundamoo because for some inane reason I have been using the same internet name since middle school. Um, on Amazon, you can buy my books. I publish under Natalie Maher because that's my name. And on my Patreon, also under Thundamoo, which you can find through either of those places. There's links in Royal Road or in the ebooks themselves.
And that's Thundamoo, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Thundamoo. Yeah, yeah.
Thundamoo. Don't ask.
No, I get it. Yeah, I've got some silly names too.
I am doing my best to phase that out of my
Yeah.
professional branding, but it was just part of it because that's how this all started.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
All right. Natalie, thank you for chatting with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. This has been good.
Good. And thanks all of you for watching. Go check out Natalie's work and enjoy the rest of the con.